Few exercises in democracy make quite as much of a media hit as an American presidential or British general election. Debates, interviews with a number of people best described as an everyman, countdowns that stretch late into the night when the voting behavior of specific neighborhoods is analyzed and reanalyzed, it just beams with drama. Throw in the fact that in many ways the destiny of the next several years of world affairs hinges on the opinions of 330 million Americans or 60 million Britons, and you've got the sort of stuff that network executives dream of. Except for the politically apathetic, people of every status are glued to the media. And yet, the two systems couldn't be more different. While only royalty approaches the gravitas of the American president, at the end of the day, he or she is precisely only one third of the American government. Meanwhile, the prime minister position has much less soft power and is essentially a legalized dictatorship. This is in no small part due to the fact that the Americans and the British have completely different institutions of power. The United States had to focus largely on stability because it was a republic from its earliest days. Therefore, while the office of the president is quite powerful, it is still only one third of the federal government. There are still the affairs of Congress and the Supreme Court to consider. Meanwhile, Parliament was formed in an inherently stable system, and it grew from an advisory council to the monarch to become the government of the United Kingdom. As such, an incredible amount of power is up for grabs when the British hold general elections. The status of the British state is guaranteed by the authority of the monarch, but the course is set by the people. Despite these differences, both the Americans and the British use a system of political parties for their elections. In the United States, the dominant parties are the Democrats and the Republicans, while the United Kingdom has the Conservatives, Labor, and Liberal Democrats. Despite both using parties, their roles are quite different. In the United States, a would-be candidate for president must first gain the approval of his or her party. To do this, they have to win nomination at a convention, which is largely decided on the result of the person's performance against other aspiring candidates in a series of primary elections. These primary elections are particularly vicious, as the right to run for the highest office of the land is the reward. If they prove electable, they are given the nomination of their party and then run against the candidates from the other parties in a general election, often called a presidential election. Things in the United Kingdom are a bit different. First, the British have no primary system. Instead, individuals choose to join a political party and climb the ladder to become the party leader. For Labor, true to its name, members and trade unions have a voice in deciding leadership, while the Conservatives decide just amongst members. The trade-off is that the labor leader has to grant a great deal of power to other labor dignitaries. Meanwhile, once a conservative becomes leader, he or she largely can decide policy as they wish. Whenever there is a general election in the United Kingdom, the whole of the House of Commons is up for election. Whichever party gets the most seats in the House of Commons receives an invitation from the monarch to form a government comprised solely of members of their party. If there is no majority party, as happened some years ago, then the party with the most votes is invited by the monarch to form a coalition government with other parties in order to reach a majority. Most famously, this was done during World War II, with the conservative Winston Churchill forming a coalition with his labor opponent in the interest of national unity. For Americans, the idea of forming a government is an odd turn of phrase. Shouldn't the government already exist? In short, no. Once invited to form a government, the Prime Minister has a great deal of leeway in deciding how to allocate power. Some offices, such as the Chancellor of the Exchequer or Treasurer, are mandatory, but there is no requirement to have a designated Deputy Prime Minister, for example. However, Prime Ministers tend to make relatively few appointments outside of Parliament. In no small part, this is because the Prime Minister, with a majority in Parliament as a requirement of his or her selection for the role, already has the power necessary to pass any legislation desired. Also, this is because the British civil servants, the career non-political employees of the British government, are both flexible and surprisingly adept at their jobs. While a Prime Minister may appoint a new Minister of Education, they would be loath to replace all of the senior management. In many ways, that is exactly what an American president does once they are in office. American presidents have administrations, never governments, because there is still a huge amount of the government with nothing to do with the president. However, within those administrations, there are numerous ways to exercise power. For this reason, American presidents largely gut the leadership of many agencies and replace the managers with their own people. In this lesson, we look at the differences between the British and American electoral systems. We start by examining the power structures of the British and American systems, and then look at the role of the political parties in each. Finally, we examine the exercise of power once elected, especially how American presidents have wide latitude within the executive department but little power elsewhere, while British prime ministers have overarching authority but little need to gut other institutions due to the professionalism of said institutions as well as the easy route to political victories offered by controlling Parliament.